Is 2020-469 presentation from High Point University Undergraduate Student Committee on the Blue Lit Road Project.
Tyrone said he can't hear anything. He said he can't hear anything.
Yeah, I don't.
Hello, I can hear you all now.
All right, we're good.
Thank you.
I don't know. Our project's not up. I don't know where the person went for it. It's not showing up on here.
Did you give it to them?
Yeah, the flash drive's right there.
I don't want to touch anything. Is my
I believe so. They're allowed to remove the mask while they're speaking, aren't they? They're allowed to remove the mask while they're speaking. Yeah. Makes it a little easier to hear you.
yeah. I think we just wait. Can you put the TVs on? Yeah, we can do that. This is where it needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kimberly Jenkins.
And I'm Val Maya.
I'm Penn Kostler.
And I'm Hannah Gutenstein.
And this is our presentation on the Blue Lit Road Project. So this is today's agenda. So we're going to go through the project overview, the background, what the problem is, solutions and recommendations, the timeline for our project, the location of the blue light poles, the costs, and our team, and how to contact us.
So our project overview, we are purposing the implementation of a blue light styled security system in the city of High Point, North Carolina. As I guys have told you before when we were here for the city hall meeting, we want to put down for the first phase, which we will be talking about later on, 4 of these blue lights, but they come in different variations on to Main Street, Lexington, the corner of Lexington, and 1 on Guilford Avenue by bus stop, 1 on Rock Spring Road bus stop also. That's for the first phase. And these lights, they help implement like kind of a safe feeling around Brown Truck and where we want to put them for the first phase. It's kind of dark at night, and it increases foot traffic, and it helps people with just safety in general. And they also, I can't think of the word, emit light also. So it would brighten up obviously the streets and stuff. So yeah, thank you.
So the next thing we're going to talk to you guys about is just a little bit of background. So the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan utilizes these blue lights, and that's kind of like a college town type of thing. So you kind of see the blue lights starting to bleed out from the universities into the city themselves. Sorry.
I just want to share it for you. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you. So we're starting to see these blue lights coming from the universities and going to be placed in the cities. And then kind of like the reason why we think High Point should have these lights is because the current crime rate is kind of high, and we love this community and we always want to give back to it, including, like going out to those local businesses. So at night with all of those numbers and, just like a certain feeling of like uncertainty, whether what's going to happen. There's been a few instances that students have experienced, and we just, want to bring these lights to illuminate the area and promote walkability. A lot of those businesses are in close proximity, so walking to them would be better, for everyone with less drunk driving, and people can hit more of those spots. But you can see some of those numbers right there. And kind of our solution is to bring these blue lights and put them in phases. We propose the spots for the first phase, but as you guys continue to implement them, you can kind of see what works, what doesn't work. And with the police statistics, you can kind of see where you want to place them. And then overall, in bettering the community, it'll just, increase foot traffic. And with more foot traffic, there'll be more revenue because more people will be going to those businesses. And this is going to go a little bit more into our proposed timeline.
Hi, so this is what we have in mind for the timeline, but keep in mind, you guys can change it to fit whatever you guys feel is necessary. This is just what we have kind of felt would be best suited for this project. So as said before, 2 adjacent corners of Main Street, Lexington area, and then one by Rock Spring Road, and then the other one by Guilford Avenue. And then we also have the idea of putting some down by the new stadium and the hospital, and maybe one by the train station in phase 2. And then in phase 3, we're thinking about shopping centers, maybe grocery stores where people, go a lot. And then also going to anywhere else that the city feels that they're necessary. And then down here, I have some graphics for you guys to help you visualize where they should be placed. And next, we're going to be talking about the cost of all of this.
Yes, so the $1 million question, how much does it cost? So for the first phase, we kind of mapped it out to like $28,000, but that's can like vary and increase or decrease because there's 2 models. There's the stand pole, which we had a picture of before, and there's also one that you can put on the walls. So that can vary from $670 to $1,000. That's just for the box on the wall, or you can do the stand pole, which goes from $900 to $2,000. So it just depends on it. And also every type of pole has different accommodations to it. So some have SIM cards, some have flashing lights when you press a button, some have flashing lights and sound, some just flashlight, and then some have the call boxes with phones, or like you press a button and police are dispatched right away, or you can call someone. So it really just depends on what you guys decide. The vendor that I kind of base these numbers on is what High Point University uses, which is Talkaphone. And the guy I was in contact with was Trent, and he was really helpful and he gave me a lot of numbers, and I broke it down in one of the papers I gave you guys. So that's like a lot more information. And so also with the $28,000, it also goes into the drilling of the concrete. So I kind of broke it down further with like, depending on the inches of holes you want to do, how far down you want to go into the ground, it's approximately $250. And then for maintenance costs, it's around $200 a year. And with High Point, they have them checked every 2 weeks, which I think is pretty good because there's a liability. And I know we've talked about that before. So they're really good about checking it constantly. And the blue lights usually last around 8 to 10 years. And the lights itself usually last around 3 to 5. So it's the maintenance when you check on it too, they check all those things. And then there's our team.
And then this is just us. Parker unfortunately couldn't be here for just other circumstances. And then to contact us, as you guys already have our email, it's bluelitroadproject@gmail.com, all lowercase. So if you have any questions or anything else, please shoot us an email. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can, just one question. Does all the models have cameras or they vary there too?
They all have cameras. Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, sorry. The ones that have stand poles have cameras, and it's usually 365 radius, but the box ones, I believe, don't. It just depends on which one you get. So some do and some don't.
Just a little bit more to add to that. You can kind of pick out what you want, and then with more features, like the cost gets higher. So kind of like if you feel the need for a camera on one, you don't need a camera on the other. You can kind of like put on what you want on it.
I'll say, you know, we talked about it before, but one of the things I do appreciate this is just going up University Parkway at night, you know where those blue lights are. I mean, that's the aesthetics of it. Really, I like how it makes the area looks, but just at the same time, it is something that's super noticeable though.
Yeah, we really think that adding these blue lights will kind of create like an atmosphere of safety, and it'll illuminate more, so there'll be like less chance for anything to happen. And you know, we all have cell phones now. It's kind of like a big technological age, but you never know if like your phone's gonna be dead, or maybe you lost your phone where you were just at, and you don't know who to call if you need help. So that's why we figured these blue lights would be great in those instances.
Could you go back to the slide that had the map of where you would put them? I guess since we have the interim chief here, do those correlate with any high calls for service areas?
I'm getting old and I can't see that. I haven't listened to what they said, so I mean, without being able to look at the maps specifically and go back and look at the numbers, which we're going to do with data driven. So every time we're going to look to see if the numbers correspond with the kind of response we would probably need. I'll need to back that up with an educated answer before I get it. But I will tell you this, just from the police department side, anything that enhances safety, we're clearly going to look for. You need to go to the right. Oh, yeah. The people listening can hear. I can see the map now. Again, I'll repeat, so make sure I get on the mic to say this. With not to avoid the question or not to give an answer, but we are very much a data-driven police department. So every time we look at something, I am going to want to look at the numbers, to analyze those things, to make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck on that. So looking at the area, I do understand, you know, foot traffic and things like that, but I really couldn't give an educated answer without that inside of me. But aside from that, I mean, if it does enhance safety, because I agree with Councilman Williams, I think that the blue lights do give an aura, or at least aesthetic of that. I mean, that blue light transfers into police service in some way, shape, or form. So without getting into a data-driven answer, you know, yes, potentially. And then, you know, there's some other cautions in there. We would have to look at it from the police department side on, you know, if you push a button, does it automatically generate that police response? I have concerns on that. I mean, because that could really inundate us as a police department. Now, if somebody needs help, we want to be able to get there. But I got to know when that button's being pushed, what are we responding to? You know, we're answering 350 to 400 calls a day already. So we're pushing the limits on what we can do with the staffing that we've got. But yes, if it enhances safety, we would be looking at it.
You think there'd be a high likelihood of false alerts?
Yes.
Something like that?
That was my first concern when I heard that. Just to be honest with you, I mean, it's a button you push without a lot of attachment to it. Yeah, that seems very inviting.
I would imagine some of these companies, this is Councilman Jones, by the way, I would imagine some of these companies may or may not connect directly to the police department, but may connect to a third-party dispatcher associated with them, kind of like an ADT or CPI, that would then make the call as to whether or not you guys get alerted to that call.
Yes, and there, you know, there's a lot of things, you know, I'm sure that these sort of, what I can imagine is these devices exist a lot on college campuses. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have a daughter at State, I got a son at Appalachian, one at ECU. So they have different, I would like to see how that works on those campuses. We've already got a litmus test out there. They can tell us what's good and what's bad. We're not going down an uncharted road here, so which is very good for us. But I think the idea is good. I like the initiative of this, at least on their part. I think it's proactive thinking.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Councilman Johnson, do you have any questions?
Just one statement. Chief, don't call yourself old. We're about the same age.
No, you guys, you actually answered that question that I was going to ask. So, no, I'm good.
I have one. This is Councilman Moore. Your contact with your suppliers, I have a couple of thoughts. Did they talk anything about what the chief inferred? Is there a blueprint out there outside of a college campus parameter that you're aware of?
So one of our other group members, actually, she lives in Greenville, North Carolina, and her town has the blue lights. Okay. And she tried to get in contact with her town hall about it too, but they didn't respond to her.
Okay.
But yes, there are other towns that use it.
And I know you guys as students are kind of like us as council people. We're not going to be here forever. So where do you foresee your initiative if we can get it in place and get it moving forward outside of the campus? What is the student's role going forward? Or is after it's off the ground, does that become kind of the city's baby?
I would say, because we are all graduating seniors, we wish that, this could have extended longer. However, we did plan to have this potentially put on the 2021-2022 budget. And although we are graduating, as we come back for alumni weekend and for other events that High Point holds, and of course, revisit our favorite local bars and restaurants and stuff like that, we'll definitely love to see them at that point. But either way, High Point's only growing. So more and more students are going to be coming to the High Point area. And I know that they would definitely love to see it. And just like anyone else, going out to dinner or to grab a beer or anything, walking to your car or wherever and seeing that will just make you feel a little bit better. So yeah.
Thank you.
Also to add on that, like a lot of us are doing the master's program too. So there's gonna be a lot more students here. Like personally, I'm gonna be here next year too. So like we have a lot more High Point population coming back. So that's why we're also gonna be like in contact if you need us for next semester too.
There's houses for sale here and everything else. So
I'm looking, don't worry.
My sister's a freshman here now, so I'll be coming back for the next 3 years.
Oh, here you go.
So,
Okay.
You're not getting rid of us, sorry.
Yeah.
Any other questions for this group from the committee? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving.
You too. You need help.
Our next item on the agenda is 2020-470, presentation results of the police department's traffic safety initiative. We have our interim chief, Travis Stroud, as well.
Again, thank you guys for having us. This is Interim Chief of Police Travis Stroud. With me, I have Lieutenant Pete Abernathy, who runs our traffic division, and Major Sellers, who runs Fields Up North, which traffic falls into that division, just to give you a little bit of a hierarchy in there with it. I will give a quick little overview and touch briefly on the why of the traffic surge before we turn it over to Pete, who will get a little more in depth on the why and give you the results that pretty much you want to hear. 115,000 people in the city, quite a bit of vehicular traffic, as you can tell. We have noticed, especially I have noticed, in the increase in our traffic inside the city, we have also seen an increase in bad driving. To be nice about it, it's awful driving. That's the Travis Stroud assessment of what I see out there in the roads every single day. I think we have a significant amount of dangerous driving that I've observed, our officers observed. Judging by the amount of calls that I get to my office about driving, Randy McCaslin gets to his, Greg Ferguson gets to his, and I imagine every one of your phones and texts and emails ring off about driving. This was clearly something that we needed to address. And that's outside of looking at the numbers that Pete will probably give in just a minute. This is something we observed. Our job as the police department, as you heard me say before, and it's in our mission statement that we've now adjusted in part of our strategic plan. We look at that statement that's behind you, and the word safe falls to us as a police department. Safe extends far beyond anything with just violent crime or crime to a person. Safe is a holistic approach, and that includes our driving. We felt like the numbers and the driving was so bad, it was so significant that we needed to really focus on this and put something together. So throughout the idea for the traffic project, and really, this is the normal around the police department, we give ideas, and then folks like this put it into motion. And I think the numbers and what they did and put together will speak for themselves. So I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Abernathy first.
Well, good evening. I appreciate you being here and giving me an opportunity to speak. I recognize a lot of you, so good to see you. Well, I'm Pete Abernathy, of course, at High Point Police Department. I've been here since 2003, and I've been involved with the traffic unit in some form or fashion since 2010. And currently supervise the traffic unit. And our mission in traffic is to do traffic enforcement and also crash investigation. and those things kind of go hand in hand. So what we noticed is, of course, at the probably late fall, so into September, mid to late September, had this massive rush of traffic fatalities. And at the moment, we've had 13 fatal crashes with 14 deaths involved. And when I went back and looked at some of the data, and of course, like Chief said, we are data driven. That's the best source of what we do. It's measurable, and we can go back and see if what we've done, did it work? Because if it's not working, we need to do something else. So when we went back and looked at the information that we had at hand through our crash reports and our traffic stops, what we noticed is that the speeds were increasing and that the speeds involved with fatal crashes were increasing. Like I said, I've been with the traffic unit in some fashion since 2010, and I cannot remember a time that we had so many crashes over 100 miles an hour. And of the 13 crashes, 5 of those have involved speeds of over 100 miles an hour. And we're in a municipality and a city. This is not out, in the county anywhere. These are on our city streets that we all travel, on South Main Street, on Johnson, and Oakview, and Brentwood. So all over the city where we have lots of traffic. So after examining that, we knew that we needed to do something different. And when did that trend start? So a little bit of history about how I approached it was to go back and look and see when we started to see that increase. And nationally, what I noticed, and it's well published in other areas too, is that towards the middle of March, when most of the country went into sort of a shutdown, and we had a lot of reduced travel. Folks weren't supposed to be out on the road, period. And if you were, it was just for work and very essential things. And so, you had wide open roads, and you had very few people out on them. And the folks that were out on them, kind of stepped that speed up a little bit every time they got out on them a little bit more, right? And, I think part of it was human nature, but then it just kept evolving and evolving. And so the speeds just kept increasing and increasing. And so from North Carolina all the way to California, what we noticed is we were seeing more and more 100 mile an hour. I'm going to call them super speeders, okay? Because there's just you don't go 100 miles an hour to pass a truck or anything else. There's just no reason for it. So we went back and looked at all that information and saw that the trend we were seeing in High Point was the same as what we were seeing nationally. And then what can we do to address that? We stop cars. We've always stopped people for speeding and for other violations, but how can we capture the audience that may be out there that, they haven't graduated to 15 miles an hour or more. Maybe they're just speeding 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. But every time they get out and they do that, a little bit of speeding, then that emboldens them to speed a little bit more next time and a little bit more next time. So the idea was to create this traffic surge. And during this surge time, it was 2 weeks. We picked 3 areas every day that we were going to work and surge into, and really try to get these folks that were doing they were as dangerous driving, but it wasn't the most dangerous driving, and try to get in front of those folks first and to educate them and to try to slow them down and give them some presence to prevent them from becoming a more dangerous driver. And of course, in the course of that, we continued to stop the most dangerous drivers and continued to do our job that way as well. But I think really the core of this was to capture that little bit of an audience that wasn't getting our attention to begin with, and to prevent them from moving on to worse driving behaviors. So during this 2-week traffic safety surge, we worked together with the marketing department, which I was happy to learn that we had. And of course, the mayor was kind enough to come out and make a video for us as well to put his support behind it, and we appreciate that. But we took this 2 weeks, and the way that we determine the locations we were going to work was, of course, through data. So we've got lots of information out there based on our crash reports. We know the date and the time that crashes happen. And of course, we can, siphon that down to the, what day of the week and what time of day and what hour of the day and exactly what locations. So when we melted all that down, what we found was we had a huge number of crashes on Eastchester Drive. And I don't think that would be a surprise to anybody. But when I did a 3-year look back, there was over 1,300 crashes on Eastchester. So the next highest crash location was anything on North Main Street with about 500. Beyond that was South Main Street with about 350 or 400. And then the next level down was anything on the Johnson Street corridor. Okay, so we took those locations and that's where we needed to be. And in addition to that, I added North Centennial because we had a huge number of calls from citizens that live on North Centennial that are impacted by the traffic from the university and traveling downtown. And it seemed like a good time to have a larger presence there. So that's what we did. Beyond that, like I said, we worked with the marketing department and got some good information out to put out to our media partners so that when officers spoke with drivers that they stopped, they were seeing consistent message. And that was really a key part of this was the consistency. This is primarily we want to stop these folks from driving bad so that we can make our roads safer. But we want to have a consistent message with that. And so part of that message was this driver reset. Okay, so the image we used for that was just sort of a generic reset button. And there's some folks and might like to do a reset on 2020 altogether. So it seemed like a pretty good time to do that. So sign me up for them. But so that's what we put out. And then we took some time to speak with officers that were going to be involved and really hand selected those and made sure that they were going to deliver the same message that we wanted delivered. And we wanted to be very consistent with our enforcement and how we were speaking to folks and the results that we were shooting for. And of course, our goal here was just simply to make driving safer in High Point. And that seems like a very clearly defined goal. It should be very easy to measure, right? And whatever we did, we needed to make sure that we could measure that because that's part of what we do is through data. So at the conclusion of the 2 weeks, what we had found is that officers had stopped 989 drivers. And of those, about 60% were for speeding. All right. About 60% were for speeding, 10% were for seatbelt violations, and the remaining 30% was for other unsafe driving behaviors, which were a culmination of following too close, unsafe movement, distracted driving, and failed to yield right away, and unsafe passing. So those were the numbers that we had. And there was about out of that 989, 552 of those were traffic citations, and 437 were written warnings. Out of those numbers, the thing I'm probably most proud of is the written warnings, because those are people that ordinarily we may not get in front of. And if we can, if I can take 5 minutes with you and give you a card that says reset button, take a moment, put it in your visor and try to remember this next time you're going a little too fast. If that, obviously if that saves one person or saves somebody some heartache, then that's mission accomplished. Beyond that, the number I'm just really tickled with is zero. And really zero in this is the best number I've seen, because that's how many fatalities we've had since we started this project. We didn't have any in October, and we're moving, most of the way through November now. And so I really feel like that message is getting out. And so that's zero is the thing I'm most proud of with that. That's sort of the surge and the reset in a nutshell, so to speak. So do you have any questions I can answer for you?
Is this a temporary kind of a campaign, or is this going to be ongoing, that we were going to increase the enforcement or whatever?
Sure. Well, yes, we're going to continue to do this. The first surge was 2 weeks, and we did 3 locations every day. And really the surge part of it, I think, defined it pretty well, because we really wanted to come in and make an impact, right out of the gate and make a big impact, and have folks really get this reset in their mind. We want you to reset your driving behavior. And so to continue that, we've got another surge coming up the week of Thanksgiving. So we'll do this again during that week, because that is traditionally the most traveled day, that Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And I know some of the students from the university, and the chief mentioned it before about the blue lights and on the poles and that sort of thing. And really, part of having a lot of officers out there on the highway and on the streets during these times is the effect that just seeing a lot of blue lights has. So if we have a lot of folks out there, they might, one officer that has one car pulled over might have 1,000 cars drive by and see those lights in that 10 minutes they're out with them. And maybe that's 1,000 people that aren't going to speed now for a little bit. So yes, we're going to do that again, monthly.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, Councilman Williams here. Just the units, I don't know what they call, but the ones that kind of has the sign that tells you how fast you're going, was that part of this?
Those are called radar signs, and they were a part of the pre-surge data collection. So you will see those, and I know a couple of you have requested those, in the areas that you represent. And we've got 4 of those signs at the moment. We typically put them out in pairs, but what they do is it mounts to an existing pole, and it just tracks the speed of a car. It doesn't send us anything, but it just collects the date and the time and the speed, so that we know, okay, well, on Woodrow Avenue between 2:15 and 3:45 on Wednesdays, that's the worst speeding. And so that would be the most efficient time for us to go out and work that area. So leading up to the surge, we deployed those in some of these areas, like on North Centennial, you may have seen them, so that we had a better idea of the best time to deploy our folks out there, for the biggest bang for the buck, to be the most efficient.
Well, just so you know that it used to be when they say, "Oh, the police are out there, they're everywhere." That's the place you avoid. But this actually has been positive. A lot of people glad to see you there. Just so you know, that's the calls I'm getting.
Wonderful.
I'll tell you an interesting thing, because I'm one of the ones that's always requesting it. But when we had those speed radar signs over there on Waterview and some of those areas, and to follow up, when we followed up with you guys about the data, is that the bulk of people are not speeding. It's really, what was it, 90-some% people were driving the speed limit, obeying the laws or whatever. It's just a small demographic of people are just hauling tail down Waterview every day. And as someone who walks those streets with my dogs and all that other stuff, in your mind, that one speeder, even though there was 20 other cars that went past you in the last 5 minutes, you just think that everybody was hauling tail down the road, but it really was just the one that just burned you and made you so mad that you just assume they're all speeding. So I think that data is important, and I'm glad we did that so you guys would know what hot spots to monitor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilman Johnson, do you have any questions?
This is Councilman Johnson.
Sounds like the connections.
Are you on dial-up? Yeah, we can't hear you. It's really spotty and bad connection. Okay.
But I
You text.
would say definitely we have received, this initiative was very successful. Can you guys hear me?
We can now.
Hey,
Yeah, we can't.
No, we can't.
no, you can't. Okay.
You're in and out. You're in and out, Councilman Johnson. If you have a question and you text it to us, we'll relay it for you. He said, just go ahead and move on. Thank you.
All right, well,
Thank you,
thank you guys so
Abernathy.
much.
Travis Stroud again. I'd like to thank Pete again. They put a phenomenal project together. A lot of work went into this. It makes it look very simple, but there is a lot of lead time that went up where they were extrapolating data and examining. It's not just simple as rolling it out there. So I'm very proud of what they did, but with very little direction. We just said, hey, we got a traffic problem. Let's do something about it. And then this is the product you get. And I think the results will speak for themselves. So one leadership moment for Lieutenant Abernathy. Anytime you say we haven't had any up to this point, you always knock on wood. It's like a fail safe. Trust me, I've learned this in this job in 112 days of doing it. So always knock on wood, buddy.
Who's counting, right?
Yeah.
Well, Chief Stroud, I will say I saw a link. Somebody was talking about the Fox 8 story. They were talking about some of the violence that's going on in some of our sister cities. And one of the interesting statistics was they did mention that up in some of our sister cities and a 25% decrease in High Point. So we still got a long way to go, but definitely shows we're moving in the right direction.
We are. And, you know, that's an interesting stat because we are looking at potentially, there you go, a record year as far as our crime stats go. But still, you know, as much as I look at the stats and I love those things, I'm still looking at what's in front of us. And I still see too much. As the interim chief of police, I think we all do. Well, that we're not good with the 25% reduction. That's just not good enough.
Yeah.
So we'll keep.
And that's why that's why we have you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the truth. It's a matter of perception.
She's selling the point.
Fake news.
She was trying to say something.
I have learned that too. Just keep
Now, is that
fighting your
all
battles.
for item 470? Is it all for
Yes,
that?
sir. I'm sorry. I was reading.
That's all for that part of the presentation for that
Yes, sir.
agenda? Okay. And then our next item on the agenda, Councilman Jones, is item 2020-471, a presentation, Police Department's program with the Mental Health Associates of the Triad. I think Major Sellers, or is it going to be?
I'll do it briefly in the beginning. I'll turn it over to Major Sellers.
All right.
On this last little part for our presentation today, a quick little, again, why are we here? I think that's important that we explain those things. Historically speaking, from the law enforcement circle altogether, High Point Police Department, any PD, doesn't matter where you are, we have had a long-standing history of failing to reach out for help. That's what you want to call it. We internalize a lot of problems. The job is very, very stressful. And then you take everything else that goes into your personal life and lump that into one. Everybody's got issues in some way, shape, or form. I dare to say everybody in this room has something going on in their life that they have to deal with. Well, we're no different as cops, even though sometimes we are looked at differently, like those things don't exist for us and we're immune to them. We are not. But we are historically awful about reaching out for help. There's been a stigma that goes with that, as if it's a weakness. Maybe that's the word. I don't know that goes with it, or that you're not fit for this job. And that is not the case at all. It's just taken us a long time to really realize that. So in a big push across the country for law enforcement is officers' mental health and assistance programs for those folks. One of our biggest goals at the police department right now that we've identified is we want to retain our officers. The ones that we have in place, we hired them. We only hire the best. We've trained them. We know we've vetted them. We know what they can do. We want to keep our officers working. A lot of departments are losing people left and right. That is not the case with us. We want to keep our people in the job. And their well-being is a big piece of this puzzle. It's not just the physical well-being, but it's the mental well-being. So we need to find ways to do that. We've had several incidents here and there with officers. We've reached out and things just haven't worked out. There's not a comfortability level with it for officers to reach out. So we need to find a new avenue to do that. Major Sellers was a big catalyst for this. I will turn it over to her so she can break down exactly the steps that we went through. But I think this gives us exactly what we need. So I'll turn it over to her. And one thing before I do turn it over to her, I'll tell you this. I always got something to say. You know this. She was promoted a couple of months ago. And I told you, you would not be disappointed. This is exactly the kind of work we're going to get out of her. We've gotten out of her, and we'll continue to get out of her. I mean, she was doing this stuff before she was wearing those Oakleys on her collars. So she's done a phenomenal job with this.
Good evening, everyone. Let me start by telling you how I'm going to follow up what the chief has described as how we got here. When I started almost 20 years ago, one of the things that was taught to me early on is self-care. We have to take care of ourselves. We will see things in this profession that no human wants to see. As simple as that. So I was encouraged, when you're off, do non-police related things, spend time with family, exercise, take care of yourself. And as I've been here over the years, I have relayed that message, taught that same message to numerous officers, and we still do that. Well, we have a group of officers at the police department and employees that form what we call the peer support team. And that is a unit that's all over the nation that all agencies have. And that unit basically identify another officer that may be in crisis, and we offer support, whatever that support may look like. And that can be one of the things that gets us a lot is breakups of relationships, whether it's divorces, whether it's death, whether it's just separations. It hits us hard. And so what we do as peer support is we follow, we mentor, we are there to help that officer adjust through that process. Well, what has happened in a short period of time, actually, we are identifying things that are well beyond the capabilities of the peer support team, things we are not able to handle. We are not certified counselors. And so 2020, as you all are aware, has been a very challenging year for us. We've had, and as well as for you all, COVID-19, we had officers coming to work and family members are at home saying, please don't go to work. I don't want you to go. I want you to stay here with me or with our family. And so then they would come to work and they would see things and they're thinking about family members at home. And so we had a lot of breakdowns, quite a few. And as the peer support team, we're the first ally or the first connection. We couldn't handle all of it. And so Chief and the executive team at the time this was a message to them. We all were aware. We all saw it. Well, one of our connections, who used to be a former police officer, who is now a doctor in the mental health field, her name is Dr. Kim Sobin. She and I have spent a lot of time talking about the wellness and health of officers. She works for mental health, the Triad. And so we actually started having meetings and we started talking and just trying to formulate a plan as to how we could help. And she has been phenomenal. Mental health of the Triad has been phenomenal. And so we basically came to a point where there are certain things that they're going to offer for our department. One of which is consultations. She will do a consultation. We can identify an officer that's in crisis. That officer could be in crisis because, like I said, a breakup of a relationship, or because of a critical incident. That critical incident for me may be totally different for another officer. Just to give you a little update, basically on what Lieutenant Abernathy was talking about the fatalities. Our last fatality at Johnson and Oakview, where we had 2 young people to pass away, I had about 4 officers in crisis because of that. And they identified, and they had children around the same age. They actually pulled these individuals out of the vehicles. They were in crisis. And so what she does is she consults, and she will consult with an officer and see what resources that they may need. So that is one item that she will provide. She also, and not only she, but she and MHA, they will also provide trainings for officers, and that will help us identify what type of mental awareness that we see on the street. We encounter a lot of people that have different ailments, and she can help us identify what those are, and she can help us formulate a response. Okay. In addition, what she and her team will do, if we have a TAC call out, let's say we have a subject that's barricaded in a residence, she can actually respond and she can guide and offer advice to the supervisors on that scene. And so those are just a few things that their unit will be doing with us. And I think they are all equally important and they're very much needed. And I'm very excited about the partnership. We've used her already. I can't tell you how many times I've had to call her and say, can you guys see one of my officers? Can you get them in? And she gets them in. And they work with them because it's clearly written on the wall. This is above peer support capacity. We've used EAP. COVID-19 has put a hitch in that because a lot of the counselors and therapists can't see them in person. And so cops, like Chief said, a lot of them are very proud. Their responses are, we are here to fix problems. We can't be a problem. And so they are very reluctant to talk to a counselor or therapist over the phone. They need to see someone in person. So we've had a lot of challenges, but I think this is going to be a great plus for us. And it's going to be really, really successful in regards to the continued care of officers. And if we are cared for and we are healthy mentally, that's going to make us much more successful as an agency.
Mr. Chairman, again, if I may. Because of age and fatigue, I know I'm not going to articulate this well.
That's fine.
But this is huge.
Yes.
This is very big. It's because it resonates far beyond the officer or the family members and your agency. Because that has like been one of the biggest roadblocks when it comes to dealing with some of the things in our community is mental health. And for you to pull this out of God knows where, this is amazing. It really is.
Well, I can't stand here and I give my chief and my colleagues, give them their accolades on it, because I can remember going to them and saying, we have officers that are in crisis. They are. And they're very proud. You won't notice in the hall. They're going to go out here and they're going to do a job and they're going to do it professionally. But they're hurting on the inside and we got to give them help. And they all responded, and that was a message that was very well received. Very well received. And I can't commend mental health triad. I can't commend them enough either. Dr. Sobin, absolutely phenomenal to work with. She clearly has a passion for law enforcement and the well-being of our employees, not just the sworn ones, non-sworn as well.
I'm kind of thinking policy or legislative right now. This kind of looks like a possible model program, and the conversation we need to have with our state and county leaders when it comes to so far as how they can tie and assist with funding and stuff. So much down the line, but I'm really telling y'all, this is big.
Well, I will say I've been on the board of the MHA for 3 years because obviously with everything to do with veterans, I've encountered a lot of mental health issues, and I had no idea that we had done this until our last board meeting we held at the Rockers Stadium. And I've known Dr. Sobin for, I guess, 3 years as well, and talked to her about the different things that we are dealing with the veterans we're trying to help and all that. And I thought the same thing you did. And when I heard this, because the uniqueness that makes us so proprietary about what we're doing with Dr. Sobin is she's actually, former law enforcement. So she's walked a mile in those shoes. So not only does she understand mental challenges and disorders and things of that nature and the stressors, she understands the actual stresses of being in that uniform. And so she's going to be able to help the officers who are dealing with mental health, stress, anxiety, whatever. But I think on the call outs too, there's a lot of situations that aren't just textbook, somebody's shoplifting. There's something where they're, like you mentioned, a hostage situation or whatever, but there's situations like that whether it's a police officers not trained to know maybe what that person's dealing with, what they're experiencing, what they're thinking right then. They may not have the background and training to de-escalate that situation in as safe as method as possible. So using a partnership like this could help avoid it getting worse than it could be, you know? So yeah, I mean, my first thing just to Dr. Sobin after that meeting was, I want y'all to present to Public Safety Committee because this is exciting. And I think this could be a duplicatable model for police departments across the country.
I totally agree. She's going to be very, advantageous to us. She's not here because she's ill today, but her supervisor is here. If you want to hear from her.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from Ellen Cochran, please.
I'm Ellen Cochran, and I'm Executive Director of Mental Health Associates of the Triad. And I don't have a lot to add to what the Chief and Major Sellers have already said, except that I would like to make this point. We started working with the courts in Guilford County about 10 years ago. Dr. Sobin came on our staff, and I think one of the best things I ever did for the agency was when I hired her. And this is where her love is. You don't have to scratch her very deep before you find blue. So my role in this has been to just say, I crunch numbers and say, this sounds good. And she has done most of the other work, and she is certainly the one that will be providing most of the excellent care that these guys are gonna be receiving. So I feel like I'd be remiss not to say one more thing, and that is, I attended an earlier meeting where I met the Chief and Major Sellers and a few of the other guys for the first time. I was very impressed when I walked out because I didn't know what exactly we were needing to do, but I walked out very favorably impressed that this police department already had a lot of things in place. We weren't going in and starting from scratch or having to kind of pull people along to a vision that we had. They already had the vision. They already had a firm foundation in place. And so, in my opinion, this is the logical next step for them. And my humble opinion is that this police department is something that the entire High Point community can be very proud of. Any questions for me?
No, this is Councilman Moore, but I would just like to follow that up and say I highly agree. And as a citizen, I want to thank Chief Stroud and Officer Abernathy, Major Sellers for the presentations you made today. Show that you're proactive and not just reactive, and you're taking something that is already good and you're making it better. Several of you mentioned the COVID situation we're in. The COVID is stressing every single fiber of fabric this country got right now. And y'all's chosen profession is already quite stressful. So I'm thankful for you, and I support you, and I think this is I hope it will be an internal positive effect for the stresses that your officers face daily, and I appreciate you.
Well, and I will say too, I think one of the responsibilities I think that we carry being here as city leaders is, and I'm always asking, I asked Chief Schultz and Chief Stroud today, I'm always asking, how's morale, how the officers doing? And one thing I've always wanted to know from him is, do they understand and believe that their city leadership backs them, supports them, cares about them? I served with some of them, And this is just one more clear example of the city leadership stepping in and saying, we care about you, not just the job you do when you put the uniform on, but how's your family? Another thing we didn't mention too is this even extends to the spouses. So if an officer has an incident that's causing them stress, anxiety, whatever, we're even going to be checking in on the spouses, or you will be checking on the spouse to make sure they're okay because they carry some of that burden. So I think anything we can do to show officers that we care about them holistically will help us with hiring and retaining good officers. So thank you so much. This is one more exciting announcement of the year. Councilman Johnson, if you want to chime in, do you have any questions for any of our guests?
All right, can you all hear me now?
I just asked if you had any comments or questions for any of our guests.
I do have a comment, but I wanted to make sure that you guys can hear me.
We can.
Yep.
Finally.
All right, perfect. Okay, this is major news. I'm as Officer Sellers was speaking about it. I was just, yeah. I'm excited about that because you're correct, Councilman Jones. That does reach beyond the officer and it touches their family as well. So kudos to the staff that got this together because this is definitely needed, and we are 100% behind you guys on this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. Is there any more business for this committee today?
Just a quick note.
Sure.
This could be a model for the national, but it won't be the first. Violent Crime Task Force, Focused Deterrence is a national model, award-winning. They have won awards over other international agencies when it comes to domestic violence and so forth. So this wouldn't be the first.
Well, just in my short time on council, we've got a lot of cool things too. Even the Family Justice Center. I mean, all these are just steps in the right direction. So it's exciting to see just one more win. So,
yep, that's all.
Well, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned.
See you, Johnson.
All right, thank you.
You know what? You got a 5:30.
Oh, we do. We do. What time is it?
5 o'clock.
Okay, so we got a half hour. I'm not even gonna bother running home. I was gonna run home and remote, but might as well just shift on over to the left.
What are you doing?